Chapter 1. I went to sleep with it every night and woke up with it every morning, fell asleep to the sound of popping softwood embers and the sighing of wind in the trees and the horses cropping grass, and to the memory of a woman I would never see again. Woke up to the chill of the early morning and a hollow place in my belly that yearned for coffee, and to the impatient stamping of the horses on their picket ropes, and to the knowledge that I didn't even know where her body was buried. The weeks of solitude in the high country, far from human contact or social convention, had done nothing to dispel my moods, and I began to wonder if I should instead have gone on a long and busy drunk. I doubted that, though. I'd make a lousy drunk. But then it seemed I was a flop as a solitary mountain man, too. Those old-timers had been hardy and self-sufficient, at peace with the land around them, if not always with its inhabitants. Me, I was just a wanderer with a load of self-pity on his shoulders, so heavy that I was no longer seeing the country I rode through. I'd entered the public land at my ranch north of Lake George, and hadn't seen a fence or another human, not close enough to talk to anyhow, since then. I'd ridden across the minor peaks and around the major ones, until I could see the lights of Denver far below and far away, and then turned back into the mountains, not wanting anyone's laughter or happiness to intrude on my self-condemnation. Oh, I was in a fine black mood, and I was milking it for all it was worth, and then some. Poor, pitiful me. Isn't that how the song goes? Poor, pitiful Carl Heller. Went and messed up. Got a lady killed, he did. Not his fault? Well, there's always a rationalization if you want to use it. But I was rationalizing in the other direction, wallowing in the guilt of it all. And I was coming to think of myself as a first-class creep. What was worse, I was starting to like it. What woke me up was a band of bighorn sheep. At least I happened to be glassing a band of them when it occurred to me for the first time just quite what an ass I was being. It was late enough in the year that the bighorns were beginning to come down to the valleys, and this bunch was picking its way along behind the lead of an ancient ewe. She was an ugly, patchy-coated old thing. Hardly the stuff calendar photos are made of, but she was a wise old thing, too, moving with a stately dignity and sureness of direction that could only have come from many seasons of knowledge and experience. Not far behind her was a half-grown lamb, ewe or ram I couldn't tell, bounding with impatience, springing onto rocks and ledges that the old ewe had disdained, finding dead ends and bounding back to join the flock, dashing to and fro so that it traveled 4 times as far to accomplish the same amount of descent as the ewe had done so easily. I watched them in the binoculars and I laughed, and as I did so, it occurred to me that that was the first time I had laughed in weeks, and I wondered briefly which I wanted to be like myself, the old ewe or the busy lamb. I really didn't want an answer, but I thought I knew what the answer would be if I permitted myself to give one. I didn't like that. I turned away from the bighorns and walked back down the slope to the remains of my fire, tossed some wood on the coals to build the flame again, and went to pull the picket pins of my filly and old bell mare to move them to fresh graze. I wasn't going anywhere in particular, and if I didn't feel like moving camp to another location, well, there was no good reason to do so. The routines of the camp busywork came automatically, and I found myself taking stock for the first time in quite a while. If I didn't like what I found, that wasn't particularly surprising. Physically, it wasn't so bad. 5 foot